Does Apple have some major surprises planned for the October event? The long-awaited and long-rumored October event is finally official and happening in a couple of days. And I have spent the last few days myself pouring through all the leaks and rumors and information to find out everything that you guys need to know about regarding this October 18th event. And there's a lot that you need to know. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you about all the major announcements happening in just a few days. Get ready, because this is gonna be one to remember. And a big thanks to Keeps for sponsoring this video. Apple's event invites are always sort of something special. They're creative, they're playful, and they always sort of are a nod to what we could be seeing at that event. And of course, this October 18th invite is no exception. We sort of have these light trails, this unleashed tagline, sort of this hyperspace theme, which sort of leads us to believe we're going to be seeing something about performance and blazing fast sort of light speed computers, and maybe unleashed computers and processors as well, kind of confirming that we're going to see the successor to the M1 chip, the M1X, and hopefully some all-new redesigned Silicon Macs. Also, what I just find so interesting about this invite is the date. This is a Monday, October 18th event, and this is something a little unusual. Apple has done a rare Monday event in the past, so they really tend to stick with usually Tuesday for their major events, and there is some speculation online as to why. Some have speculated that this was sort of planned all along and this is just what Apple wants to do, but others think that maybe Google's event with the Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro launch might have had something to do with this. Maybe Apple was sort of bowing out, allowing Google to sort of have the day and have their time in peace on October 19th, or some believe that Apple was sort of looking to upstage Google and knowing full well that if they have their event on Monday, they will sort of own the news cycle for the rest of the week. What do you think Apple was doing here? Were they being kind to Google, or do you think they knew exactly what they were doing all along? Now, interesting observation aside, of course, the star of the show is really twofold here with this October event, because we're expecting to see this next generation Apple Silicon chip and also these new redesigned Macs, specifically an all new redesigned MacBook Pro lineup, two different models that should have some pretty significant changes and should be basically the biggest change we've seen to the MacBook Pro since its last overhaul back in 2016. And that major redesign 5 years ago was a good thing for the MacBook Pro in a lot of ways, but also Apple did miss the mark in some areas enough that it would really haunt them for many years to come. For example, the transition over to USB-C was a bit of a bumpy road, to put it mildly. Obviously, Apple would really push the industry forward. Many manufacturers of adapters and computers and a lot of other accessories would adopt USB-C, in part thanks to Apple making that move, but also it led a lot of us to sort of have to buy these dongles and live in sort of this dongle hell for many, many years. It's obviously nice as more components adopt to USB-C, but in a lot of ways it's been very frustrating and has sort of made me really miss those full-size ports. I miss the HDMI port, I miss SD card ports, I even miss the Ethernet port, for example, and USB-C is just sort of here to stay. The notorious butterfly keyboard was also an issue for Apple on more than one occasion, and to their credit, the keyboard on the MacBook Pro has gotten significantly better in the past 5 years. I actually really like sort of the current iteration of that latest keyboard, but it didn't come without some bumps in the road, and Apple did have to make a lot of corrections in order to get things sort of back on track. That butterfly keyboard wasn't really loved by most people. And the same could be said for that little OLED strip living right above the keyboard called the Touch Bar. Now, some people love the Touch Bar, they love the functionality, they love the versatility, the customizability, while others, like me, were more annoyed by the Touch Bar than anything. It just sort of took longer to do different commands and to press keys than it would be if you just sort of had those physical keys up there. And it sort of always had this really mixed reaction and this mixed reputation. Some people love it, but I think more people than most really didn't care for that little screen above their keyboard. But that is all about to change in just a couple of days, because the MacBook Pro again is going to be getting some pretty significant changes with two new models, a 14-inch model and a 16-inch model. That kind of shows that Apple is going back to their roots. They're actually adding back ports. They might be removing the Touch Bar and making these machines, these new MacBook Pros, better than they've really ever been before. Yes, Apple is actually adding ports back to these new MacBook Pros, kind of giving us the most highly requested back in full size on these new Apple laptops. That means we're gonna get a full-size HDMI port, a full-size SD card slot, still a mix of some USB-C ports on there as well, and a new MagSafe charging connector. Now, this is not the same MagSafe as we have on the iPhone. This kind of goes back to the original MagSafe back with those MacBooks and MacBook Pros. A couple more little odds and ends here as well. We're hearing that the base MacBook Pro should come with 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage. Both models will of course have a new and improved upgraded 1080p webcam, and they should come with a new charging brick as well. Now, a new little tidbit of info and news nugget regarding these new MacBook Pros has to do with the display. Now, of course, we are expecting mini LED displays on these new MacBook Pros. Both the 14-inch and 16-inch model should have this all-new display. Of course, mini LED is on the iPad Pro 12.9. It's bright, it's vibrant, it's colorful, has basically deeper blacks and regular LED panels. It basically gives you a lot of the benefits of OLED without the cost associated with OLED, and that should be great to see on these new MacBook Pros. But another rumor we're hearing is that these could also be 120 Hz refresh rate panels as well. That at least is according to display analyst Ross Young, who has been correct on multiple occasions. He says 120 Hz is coming this year to the MacBook Pro lineup. Now, a little clarification here and a little distinction. 120 Hz is technically not the same as ProMotion. So we could see a 120 Hz locked refresh rate on these MacBook Pros, or we could see a ProMotion 120 Hz refresh rate display, which refers to sort of Apple's variable refresh rate technology that can sort of ramp up and ramp down depending on what you're doing. So if you're gaming and really needing those full 120 frames per second, it'll ramp all the way up. But if you're just looking at some static text, it'll ramp down. Or if you're watching a movie at 60 frames per second, you've got 60 Hertz. Basically, it's dynamically scaling based off your needs. Not sure if it's gonna be here or not, but be on the lookout for that for sure. Before we continue with more of the leaks and rumors about this upcoming Apple event, I want to take a quick break and tell you guys a bit about this video's sponsor, Keeps. Male hair loss is actually a lot more common than many people think. In fact, 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35. And the best way to do something about it is to be proactive, and that's where Keeps is here to help. Keeps is on a mission to help you treat hair loss in the comfort of your own home, giving you all the tools and resources you need, and also being a more affordable option by using generic versions of FDA-approved medications for hair loss. With Keeps, you get access to a licensed doctor who will review your information and recommend the best treatment plan for you, and it's shipped directly to your door every 3 months. You can also message the doctor 24/7 with any questions and keep track of your progress with the Keeps progress tracking tool. It's also important to remember that prevention is key, and treatment can take up to 4 to 6 months or more to start seeing results. So you gotta make sure you act fast and stick with the program. If you are ready to take action and prevent hair loss, head to keeps.com/AppleCircle or hit the link down below to receive 50% off your first order. Again, that is keeps.com/AppleCircle and linked down below to receive 50% off your first order. Now, of course, the other big part of this event is the new debut of new Apple Silicon, specifically the next M chip. Obviously, Apple is continuing through their 2-year transition, transitioning all their Macs to Apple Silicon. The MacBook Pros, of course, are going to be now transitioning away from Intel, at least at the high end. We already had a 13-inch M1, but now we're gonna have a new chip inside of these MacBook Pros, and what will it be? Will it be the M2? Will it be the M1Z? The consensus right now is that Apple is going to stick with the M1X name, basically sort of splitting up the line and making a clear sort of a denotation of which one is which. So basically what it seems like right now is that the M1, M2, M3, that is reserved for the more consumer-focused Apple products, like the iMac and the MacBook Air, and I guess to a certain extent, the lower-end MacBook Pro as of right now, and of course, the lower-end Mac Mini as of right now as well. And then the M1X and presumably the M2X and M3X, those are the slightly tweaked, turbocharged, modified M1 chips made for professionals and these pro-end machines like the new MacBook Pros, maybe a more pro-focused Mac Mini, and maybe even some of this DNA in the new Mac Pro as well. Now, if the M1 was any indication on what we could expect to see with the new M1X chips, then prepare to be blown away. Apple Silicon is obviously getting better and better year after year. It's crazy powerful, but also crazy efficient. And of course, the M1X is going to now be the new gold standard standard, it's going to set the bar, and it should be incredibly impressive. Current rumors suggest that the M1X will have a total of 10 cores with 8 high-performance cores and 2 efficiency cores, and then options for 16 or 32 cores of GPU processing power as well. Now, of course, until we go through workflow tests and benchmark tests and stuff like that, it's really hard to know exactly what these processors are capable of. But again, if the M1 is any indication, these things are absolutely going to tear through any task, photo editing, video editing, maybe even some gaming as well. Curious to see how those GPUs do with these M1X chips. And also, I'm very curious to see sort of how these stack up, obviously, to the larger competition, and also what battery life is like as well. The M1 was obviously a battery powerhouse. It was super efficient, and I'd expect the M1X to be very power efficient as well. So even if you've got your 16-inch MacBook Pro and you're editing in Final Cut, that battery hopefully will just last and should be kind of just magical. And now, in addition to the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro, what other Mac could have the M1X inside as well? I think we're still a little too far away from the Mac Pro, and that might even have a special chip inside it, maybe not even called the M1X. There have been, of course, rumors about a higher-end iMac Pro. That would also make sense to have an M1X in, but we probably won't see that. What seems to make the most sense, and what has been in the rumor mill for a while now, is a new Pro-focused Mac Mini that would have the M1X chip inside. According to some info shared to Jon Prosser, this Mac Mini looks to be a pretty exciting upgrade with a bit of a redesign on the outside and then a bunch of ports on the back. A great mix of USB-C ports, USB-A ports, a full-size HDMI port, an Ethernet port, and even this magnetic power connector that looks to be very similar to the one used in the new redesigned iMac. Of course, the inherent benefit here with the Mac Mini is that you'd get the power of that M1X chip in a much smaller, more compact, permanent size that doesn't have to go with you, and you don't have to pay for the premium price of the MacBook Pro with the mini LED display, but you'd still sort of get the power. Perfect for those who are like me that are sort of stationary at a desk that want to connect multiple monitors and don't really need a MacBook Pro, but do want the most power they can get without breaking the bank. Mac Mini seems like the perfect solution, and I really hope we see this at the October event. And of course, last but not least here, we are still expecting to see AirPods 3 make their debut at this event as well. These have been rumored for months and months at this point, and they finally should be released at this October event. Of course, a little recap here is that not a whole lot is going to change with AirPods 3. The design will be a lot more reminiscent to AirPods Pro, minus the insert silicone tips, which is a good thing or bad thing, depending on your ears. And also, we should see a slightly tweaked battery case, of course, those shorter stems, and then that's kind of all we know right now. We're assuming acoustics will be better, audio processing will be better, battery life, all that stuff. But we really don't know what specifics could come in terms of features. Could we see spatial audio? Could we see some kind of transparency mode? What is Apple reserving for the AirPods Pro? And what could they bring down to make AirPods 3 more compelling? Those are a lot of good questions that we just don't have answers to as of right now, but hopefully all will be revealed on Monday the 18th. And that is everything we know about the October 18th event as of right now. New MacBook Pros, new M1X chips, AirPods 3, and maybe one more thing in there as well. What would you guys want to see? A sneak peek at the Mac Pro, an iMac Pro with a larger display, maybe iPhone SE 3. What do you guys think about this new October event? Are you picking up a new MacBook Pro? Are you excited to see the M1X chip? Or are you sticking with the Mac you've got right now? What are your thoughts? How excited are you to finally see these new MacBook Pros launch? Seems like they've been rumored for months, if not years at this point. I, for one, can't wait to see what Apple has up their sleeves. And also, stay tuned to the channel and subscribe to the Apple Circle if you haven't already. Hit that button down below. Also, turn on notifications because we will have full coverage of everything Apple announces on this channel on Monday. And I think that about does it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching the Apple Circle. I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you for watching. I'm Robert Rosenfeld, and I'll see you guys in the next one.